The most hated M17 shoots flat. Even a bad shooter can put 17 rounds into a target the size of a dinner plate up close, and it's not afraid of rain or mud. Now picture the same guy fighting this gun with a musket pistol. He's got only one shot. He had to pour black powder down the muzzle, seat the ball with a rod, then primes the pan and prays the flint would go off on the first trigger pull. If not, then they have to try again. If he misses at more than about 20 feet, he's done, because that's roughly the range this thing can hit anything at. Worst case scenario, had to just turn it into a club. This was the Flintlock Era, the model of 1775. It was basically a British gun with the serial numbers filed off, copied at a forge in Virginia for the Continental Army. It's about as accurate as throwing it. Then in 1805 came the Harper's Ferry, and this one matters a lot. It's the first pistol ever made in a U.S. National Armory instead of bought off a contractor. 54 caliber, smoothbore, one shot. The Dragoons carried it into the War of 1812. That exact pistol became the crossed pistols badge of the Army Military Police. The last of the line was the model of 1836. It was still a 54 caliber, single-shot flintlock used in the Mexican-American War, but a huge technological leap was the use of percussion caps to speed up reloading, and the Army converted thousands of them. Union soldiers were still carrying that 1836 design into the Civil War in the 1860s. But a single-shot pistol is still slow, even with the percussion cap. Miss once, and you're reloading while the other guy closes the distance. Therefore, the whole story of the next century is one question. So how do you get more than one shot off before you die? The answer showed up on horseback in Texas. This is the Colt Walker. This was that gun, so powerful enough to shoot a horse out from under a rider. This kid, Samuel Colt, was 16, and he was working on a sailing ship when he noticed how the ship's wheel locked into place as it turned. That simple observation inspired the revolver's rotating cylinder. This was a significant step up from the flintlock because the capacity has increased with the cylinder. 44 caliber, 6 shots that have to be loaded from the front, and the bullet has to be pushed with a built-in rod. It's less a pistol than a hand cannon you strap to a saddle. Before you debate what it can do, one group of just 15 Texas Standers armed with this reportedly mowed down about 80 Comanche warriors, convincing military leaders that repeating handguns could dramatically change combat. The point is that repeating firearms changed military tactics, but the cylinder sometimes burst. The loading lever would drop under recoil and jam the gun. Therefore, Colt fixed it and called the fix the Dragoon, designed to correct the flaws of the massive Colt Walker.
Yeah, right in the middle.
Next up was the 1851 Navy percussion revolver. So this was before revolvers. One person to one shot to reload. And after revolvers, one person to 6 consecutive shots, a time where 6 shots were considered intimidating in 1851, but the caliber has gone down to a 36 caliber bullet for less recoil than the 44, and it's also lighter. Not to mention, the follow-up shots are also faster and more accurate than shoot one, load one type of deal. This was almost like the iPhone of guns at that time in the 19th century, with over 250,000 made. Remington 1858 New Model Army. When Colt's big weakness was its open frame, the Remington came along trying to beef up the frame. Some even say it shot straighter than a Colt. The gun didn't fire more bullets, but it invented a quick-change cylinder, made it one of the most advanced revolvers of the Civil War. Think of it as the 1860s version of a magazine change. By pulling a single-cylinder pin, the shooter could remove the entire cylinder and replace it with another preloaded one in seconds. This is the one you've seen in every Western ever made, even if you don't know its name. This one had at least 2 major innovations that graduated pistol from the Flintlock era. For the first time, say goodbye to the slow-loading cap and ball to self-contained metallic cartridges. No more fumbling with the powder. If it gets wet, it still works. Around the same time, .58 caliber muskets were using the Allen conversion and became breech-loading rifles so they can load the gun like this. But most people probably don't know that, while Colt was making the 1873 and 4440, it actually had better ammo, sharing with other Winchester rifles. But the big army wants the largest bullet they can fire, and it can do maximum damage. So Colt and the army came together and said, how about we do this deal as a complete fighting system? That's similar to how modern militaries develop a weapon and its ammunition together. Smith & Wesson Schofield. This one is well balanced and quick to reload with this unlocking chamber system that we have never seen before. Spent cases would come out, then you can load 2 or even 3 rounds at a time. While Colt 1873 single-action Army was still around, the Army really loved the new shell ejection system, so they can't resist and reopen the handgun trial to give this one a chance. But the problem was that the Army had already adopted the longer .45 Colt, and the new Schofield cylinder was too short to take it, so Smith & Wesson made a .45 Schofield version just to fit their own gun. Now the Army had 2 .45s floating around that looked almost the same, but were not the same, and you can guess what happened next. It was a huge logistical clusterfudge when these got mixed up in the field, and they didn't chamber correctly. But for a while there, the United States Army armed its men with a pistol and the wrong ammo to load it. Long story short, the Army had to discard this one, but Wells Fargo got a bunch of these, but them short enough to arm their agents and mailman. Colt New Army Model, 1892. By 1892, this is the first double-action revolver with a swing-out cylinder design that the US military ever adopted. 2 major upgrades in this one gun. First, you don't have to cock it, you just pull the trigger and it fires. Second, the cylinder swings out to the side to dump and reload, and the Army really liked it enough to run it for 15 years, cranking out something like 290,000 across a stack of Army, Navy, and Marine versions. Everything about the mechanism was faster to fire and faster to load than anything else before it. The Colt Model 1909. Around 1900, American soldiers fighting in the Philippines had a terrifying problem. They'd shoot an enemy fighter with their standard-issue pistol, but their .38 caliber revolvers didn't hit hard enough to put someone down. So the military panicked and went old school, back to the big, slow, heavy .45 caliber slug. And that was when the .45 Colt Model 1909 replaced the Colt New Army Series .38 Long Colts. The thing was huge, almost cartoonishly big in a normal-sized hand, and then history basically erased it. Just 2 years later, the now legendary 1911 pistol took over, and the 1909 became the shortest-lived standard sidearm the US military ever issued. Thompson-LaGarde and the M1911. As disgusting as it is, in 1904, the US Army hung dead bodies from ropes and shot them, on purpose, and they stood there measuring how far each one swung. These were the Thompson-LaGarde tests, a series of them to see which caliber was powerful enough to be used in American military handguns. Basically, they think the .38 is too weak. In the war fought in the Philippine-American War, the Moro Rebellion just didn't go down easily when .38s were thrown at them. The M1911 was the answer to a semi-automatic pistol to replace the revolvers in service. So if you want to know why the .45 is the way it is, someone came up with the pure intent to delete a man up close. Everything smaller they tested didn't just hit hard enough, but they also admitted that no pistol bullet will dependably drop a determined attacker if it just punches through soft tissue. The limb jerked hardest when the bullet slammed into the hard bone, and on the live animals, a hit to a vital part dropped them almost instantly, no matter which caliber did it. Big, small, it didn't matter. Their own numbers were screaming that where you hit is what stops a man, not how fat the bullet is. So what did they recommend? Buy a bigger bullet. So, to guarantee a stop from one hit alone in locomotion, vital or non-vital parts, you'd need a round so wide the recoil would be unmanageable in a handgun. So they didn't want anything smaller than a .45. But that test was a bit highly unscientific using today's standard. If you see a 9 versus 45 debate getting out of control, think of Thompson-LaGarde. Nevertheless, the application of his recoil energy reloading principle led to several self-loading pistols in 1896. 1985. The good old M9. 9mm, 15 rounds with that iconic slide exposing the barrel. Compared with only 7 rounds with the 1911, this was a huge capacity increase. But the real driver wasn't a battlefield failure this time. It was NATO. The 9mm was the NATO pistol standard, and the US was the last big member still clinging to its 45. Congress got involved and basically choked off the money for 45 parts and ammo until the Army picked a 9mm. When the handgun trial was going on, it was a fight. The trial itself was a fight. 2 guns passed everything, the Beretta and the SIG P226. The SIG was actually cheaper per pistol, but Beretta's total bid, once you counted magazines and spare parts, came in lower, so Beretta won on price.
Unlocking is complete when the barrel stops its rearward
But then the
movement.
guns started breaking, like on those slides showing these types of cracks. But this is the workhorse pistol that uses a non-barrel tilt cycling action that in theory is supposed to enhance the accuracy and durability of the gun by minimizing barrel movement during firing. In a 2006 survey of over 2,600 soldiers in Iraq, the M9 scored the lowest satisfaction of any weapon they carried. The big complaint was sand jamming the gun, and the real culprit turned out to be cheap contract magazines. The SIG M17 and 18. The M17 is arguably the first standard US service pistol getting sued in bulk while it's still riding on soldiers' hips. The M17 is that big one on the left, and the M18 is the compact-looking one on the right. The big change here is lightweight and modular. Both of them can attach lights and optics. All polymer besides the slide and some other metal parts. From an M9 that has the decocker, a hammer, and an all-metal frame gun to a plastic gun with no hammer was a huge jump. In fact, Glock 19 was its direct competitor at the end of the modular handgun trial. We were this close to having our troops carry Glocks. Business aside, the biggest problem was its safety drama that killed the confidence of this handgun. The gun basically can go off on its own when dropped at a specific angle, resulting in uncommand discharge. Guns are supposed to be drop safe, and it's taught to every new shooter that if you fumble and drop your gun, just let it drop without trying to catch it in midair. You might accidentally touch the trigger. On paper, it's the most modern, most adaptable sidearm we've ever issued. It won the big modular handgun contract over Glock and everybody else, and once again, followed the money. SIG's bid came in around $100 million cheaper than Glock's. Glock protested to the government, lost. Worth noting, the government even flagged that SIG's full-size gun had a higher stoppage rate than Glock's in the shortened testing, and the Army bought it anyway. Then came the drop problem. After it won, independent testing showed early P320s could fire if you dropped them on the back of the slide at the wrong angle. SIG rolled out a voluntary upgrade to the trigger group to fix it, but the story didn't end. It got bigger, and this is where it stands today. There are now more than 120 people who say their 320 fired without anyone touching the trigger. In late 2024, a jury handed an Army veteran $11 million after his gun went off in his pocket. In 2025, a Houston officer was shot through his own holstered gun directing traffic, and Houston banned it. Immigration enforcement dropped it for Glocks. A federal jury called the design defective. Now, I have to be careful and fair here because this is life and death. In the summer of 2025, an airman died at a base in Wyoming, and the Air Force paused the M18 over it. But the investigation that followed pointed to another airman pointing the gun in a joking way, not the gun firing itself. So I'm not going to hand you that death as proof the pistol goes off on its own, because the evidence says otherwise. SIG's position is that the gun cannot fire unless the trigger moves. More than 120 federal lawsuits and counting. But, capability-wise, it's what the Army wanted to graduate iron sights to something that can fit a red dot if needed. If you want to know all the handgun placement programs just to place the M9 in the last 2 decades, watch this one here.